Hi there, welcome to another episode of the 021 podcast. My name is Jifa and I'm your host. On this episode, we'll be speaking with Victress Elliott-Mills. She's a seasoned lawyer with about a decade of experience in corporate and commercial law and dispute resolution. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good. So good to have you here.
Yes, good to be here.
Why did you choose to pursue law?
Okay, so that's an interesting question because, typically people say I chose law because of some sense of justice or to help people. But really, how I got into law was very random. I did literature, so the literature combination in secondary school. So my friend and I were thinking, what do we do with this course next? And we didn't have ideas. And she's like, I think we can do law. And I'm like, you know what? I think so too. and that was it. But interestingly enough, of the two of us, I ended up becoming a lawyer.
Aww.
And she's still on the way. But what makes it interesting is, as random as it is, I think it's one of the examples where they say that the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. Because the more I do it, the more I know that this is the right thing, this is the right field, I belong here, I fit here, and I'm actually good at it.
Yeah.
So even though it wasn't a long-standing dream, because I'm not one of those that have said I always dreamed of being a lawyer. If you asked me as a child, I would have said I wanted to be a teacher so that I can use a cane. But then, I hadn't really dreamt of being a lawyer for a long time. But then when we decided, okay, law. And then that was it. We're on the path to law. So it meant that from then going, your exams, your grades, everything is targeted at getting into the LLB and then subsequently law school. But like I said, I found that beginning the law course, that is where I belong. It comes naturally. So yes, I believe that I was directed to do it and now I'm here.
How was law school like for you?
Law school. I don't want to say brutal, but law school, getting into law school alone was a whole hurdle to cross.
Yeah.
Being in law school, keeping your head above water. I wouldn't consider myself a struggling student, but law school is very demanding. So there's an expression in the law fraternity. They say law is a jealous mistress. And it's true. Because when I entered law school, I was in the middle of doing my LLM. I had to put it on hold. So when I entered, I had all the ideas that I'll go to law school, I'll do the LLM on the side. And then when I started, I respected myself. And I saw that, looking at myself, I think it would be best for me to put the LLM on hold and then focus on law school, because the way I studied, it wouldn't have been ideal for me to do the two at the same time. I had people in my class who did, and they still excelled. But knowing myself, I realized that I'm better focusing on one academic task at a time. Focus, give your best, and then move on to the next. So law school was very demanding. It took a lot of sacrifices, a lot of planning, and these are not even cliche words, because it did take a lot of sacrifices. Sundays, I was on campus. Saturdays, Sundays. It got to a point, once Creative was upset with me. I used to go there consistently on Sundays. One day he opened the gates and he was upset. Why are you here on Sunday? And I'm like, but why are you upset that I'm here on Sunday? But that's how much you have to put into it to come out, because you go in and you see that you met people there and you are leaving people there, and you have to make sure that you don't become a casualty.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it wasn't impossible. It was demanding, but once you put your mind to it, and then of course, with the grace of God, you come out.
You won an award, so I guess it was all worth it.
Well, it was, yes. It was for, interestingly enough, advocacy and legal ethics. And then I found myself doing a lot of litigation. So, yes, it was a surprising award, though. Yes, it was surprising because I didn't expect it. And they don't tell you, I don't know about now, they don't tell you you are receiving an award. You find out when you go to the call.
Oh.
Exactly. So when I got to the call, a colleague of mine met and she said, congratulations. And I also said, congratulations, because we've all finished.
Yeah.
And she said, you don't know. I'm like, no, what? She's like, oh, you won an award. I said, oh, it's not true. She's like, it's true. I said, oh, stop playing. She's like, no, it's serious. So she took me to find the brochure, and there was my name and my face. And it was like a testimony, because for everything that I went through getting into the law school, with the exams and everything, it was a huge testimony that in spite of all of that, where I was least expecting it, there was actually an award. And because it's really saying that of all the students, you were the best in that course.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of brilliant students. So for me, it was a big testimony. It's one of the things that, it's an award. You worked hard, but it was a big testimony, that one. Yeah.
I still have a screenshot of that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I still have in my Google Photos.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Okay. So as a lawyer, I know that because you have worked over the years, you have moved firms. Mm-hmm. At what point do you know it's the right time to switch firms?
So it differs for everyone. Some people switch when they feel they should be earning more based on the value they've earned. Mm. But I think that when you get to the point where you're not really learning as much, you are not growing in the firm. So either the firm doesn't have a career progression, or now you're doing the same thing. And if you're not careful, unless you want to specialize in that one field, but if you feel you're not learning as much as you'd like to learn, then it's time to move. Because then what happens is you may be practicing for so long, then you'll be stuck. Mm. And when it gets to a point and you want to pivot, then you're going through do I want to pivot at this point? Do I want to stay here? So at the point where you feel there's more I should be doing, it's time to start looking for a firm that does more of what you're looking for, or a firm that would allow you to grow better.
So in building your career as a lawyer, what has been the main differentiator for you? Because there's so many lawyers, right? I mean, actually, maybe not so much if you do like the population to like lawyer ratio, maybe not so much, but there are lawyers and quite a number of them. So what do you do that makes you stand out or different?
I think, what do you do? It's the spirit of excellence. Mm. So with whatever you do, you have to make sure that you are giving it your best, you're doing it to the best of your ability, such that if somebody takes a process, a document, something that you have worked on, you should not be ashamed of your work. Mm. It shouldn't be something you send out and then they will ask who did it, and you don't want to say that you were the one who did it. Then that's a big issue. So it's one of the things to be particular about it. And also, if you're choosing, it helps when you specialize sometimes, because then you can be very good in that field, and so you are known for that. So if you decide that, so we have lawyers that we know are excellent litigators. If you have a case you need to go to court, you know the lawyers you're calling. At the same time, you have those who are corporate commercial geniuses, those who are in the mining field. So you can also choose to specialize according to your interests, because the thing with law is, in as much as it can be general, it's very vast. You can't do everything. You can have an idea of everything. You may have touched something, but you cannot do everything. So it also helps sometimes to specialize, because when you specialize, you can hone that skill and then be recognized and known for that. So that's one way to be differentiated.
At what point do you specialize?
I think it's best to specialize after you've done it for a while. So in the early stage, some firms have a system where once you go in, they put you in a field and you're specializing there. But I feel that you have a better idea, unless you know from law school or go in and that I want to specialize in this field. It's more advantageous to do a bit of everything, and then you decide, I really don't enjoy this, I prefer to do more of this. So 3 to 5 years is a good time to try a bit of everything. And then when you're nearing the 5-year mark, you should be thinking, do I want to specialize? In what fields do I want to do? By your first 3 years, if you have the opportunity, do as much. If you get a full service firm, there's a bit of litigation, there's corporate, commercial, you have not just litigation, other dispute resolution methods. Just have a feel of everything, and then you can find your interests, or also find what you do not enjoy, so that you don't find yourself, because if you're unfortunate and you specialize early in a field you don't enjoy, you will say law is not fun. You will say that you are not enjoying the law. But it could just be an issue of the field you find yourself in. So I would say your first 3 years, try to do as much as possible. And then from there, you can be looking at narrowing it down.
Much of your work revolves around advocating for clients, right? Whether in court or in other ways. I'm sure you know best. Yes. Do you think that, how can junior lawyers advocate for themselves at work? So junior lawyers, because I feel like once you grow and you become senior, you have experience, you understand how things work. So you're like, you know how your way around, you have the experience. But if you're junior and you feel like you want to advocate for yourself a lot more at work, how would you go about that, or how should they go about that?
Your work speaks for you. As usual, I'll borrow a quote from the Bible that a man's gift makes way for him. If you want to advocate for yourself, you should understand that the employment relationship is a mutually beneficial one. So the employer is benefiting from what you are giving, and you are also benefiting from what they are giving you. Now, if your work is not worth it, no one will make sacrifices for you. So you want to advocate for yourself. You want perhaps better terms, better hours, better salary, but then your work is not up to par. When they give you work, someone else has to come and redo the work, or they hesitate to give you work. You are not putting yourself in a position where you can advocate to start with. But if you are a star lawyer, the lawyer they want to keep, the lawyer they want to make sure nobody poaches, then you already have a negotiating platform to begin. So I think your work speaks for you. Law is about work. We came to work. So let's see your work. At the end of the day, as much as we are all on good terms, we need to see your work. So if your work is good, we will listen to you. And it's one you can't hide, because it's there for all to see. And so if your work is good, it's a good place to start. And of course, you apply a little wisdom. You have to read the room. You have to know where the firm is at the moment. You even have to know the capacity of the firm. Because there are firms where, in as much as they would like to pay you more, like to give you better hours, the firm doesn't have the bandwidth to do it. So they are not able to. So at that point, it may be best to look for a new place. Or if you stay there, you have to then look for the trade-off. So am I taking this job, less money? Am I learning something that is worth the sacrifice I'm making here? And when you do that, then you tell yourself, for how long will I make the sacrifice? What am I getting from it? So you also have to be strategic about it. It's not just about everything that comes to mind, then you go and advocate because you're a lawyer. But you have to add a little bit of, strategy to it, a little bit of wisdom. And at the end of the day, you should be worth whatever it is you're asking for. So if you're asking for it, you should believe that you are worth what you're asking for and actually be worth it.
Your industry has systems or structures on how to rise through the ranks, right? So typically, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically you have to be maybe a junior associate for some time and become a senior associate, and then associates, and then partner, and then rise through the ranks. What can someone do to get ahead?
Okay, so just for a bit of differentiation, they have what the firms do. They have their own structures, but generally it's broken down. So by default, 0 to 3 years, you're a junior lawyer. 3 to 5, so you are described as 0 to 3 junior. 3 to 5, you are counsel, so the junior is off. Then from 7 upwards is senior counsel. So that is already default. But now if you are in a firm where they have the rank, some firms, as for junior is junior. But from that, between associate and senior, rising within the ranks, it's, like I said, it's dependent on your work, and also to a large extent the firm's progression policy. So the highest is your partner. Not every firm has partner open. So although you can see partners, some firms, they have a set number. So until that number reduces, or until you can make it, then so you decide some of these things. But what you can do is it's your work, and then also research the firm's progression, because if you know that rising is very important to you, then you need to look for a place that actually moves their associates up. And sometimes you move within bands. So even within the associates, you have like bands before you get to the senior, and their bands, then you get managing partner. But do your research. Find out whether the firms actually do, and if it's something you are willing to work through, fight through. Some firms do it, some firms do. There's politics. So you need to find a firm that's a fit for you, because some firms have more internal politics than others. If you know that internal politics is not your thing and you just want to keep your head down and work, then you have also to be strategic.
Yeah.
If you know that, you know what, you're natural at this, you know how to make your way in within rooms, then you're fine. There are lots of law firms. There are a lot. So you just have to do your research and find what works for you. And then, of course, your work will speak for you. And then your advocacy. Because if there are appraisals, if there are meetings, if there's an open door policy in your firm, sometimes that may not even be the case. It may just arise from vacancies. It may be a firm that has lost like a number of employees for one reason or the other. So there are vacancies. That's also an opportunity to speak to your boss and say, well, I've worked this hard. If you're bringing somebody in, I'm likely to be the one who's going to be training them on the nature of the work we do here on the firm. So this, I think, based on the value I bring to the firm, I should be considered for this position. And even if it's not accepted the first time around, at least it's now clear that this conversation has been opened up and it can be returned to at another point in time. So I think it's your work, it's the firm that you find yourself in, and then just generally knowing when to advocate for it and, looking at the times and seasons and just finding your opportunity.
You mentioned that sometimes it's just putting your head down, or if you want to just put your head down and then get the work done, you should do that. But I feel like right now there's a lot of talk around, putting your head down and doing the work is not enough. You need to keep hammering it into the ears of people and let everyone know what you're doing. What's your take on that?
It's about balance. You do need to do the work, because in as much as you may be loud, and after you have made all the noise and now we have heard you said you're a lawyer. Okay, now here's the work. It should not be the case. And it's one of the things, like, it should never be the case that somebody will regret having come to you for some legal work based on the advertisement you made, based on your own presentation, and then it's an anticlimax. So it's a balance. There is a time for putting your head down to work, and there's a time for making yourself heard. So it's really about a balance. One should not be at the expense of the other. So it's about that, because right now everyone is finding ways and means of getting themselves heard. They say LinkedIn is the new Facebook for professionals and all of that. So you see a very simple role. You know the role, but the role you are seeing on LinkedIn doesn't match the role that you know that it is. But at the end of the day, your work should match. So I believe in making yourself heard. This is not the time to say, let me just, be humble, put my head down and all of that. That is where the excellence comes in. But after that, how will people know? Your light, you have to let your light shine. Let it be heard. Let it be seen that there's something good about it. So it's a balance of the two.
If you could do something differently, looking back at the early years of your career, what would that be?
I think probably I would have been more deliberate about career progression.
Okay.
Because in the beginning, we're learning. But and I don't think that, I wouldn't say I made a mistake or I moved at the wrong time. I think I moved at the time I was supposed to move. But it would have been helpful in the early years to have a plan, some career progression. Not just wait until, okay, now it's time to go, but to actually have a target, have something to look forward to. And then so that you can have, okay, this is what I'm looking at, where I am now. How well is it serving what I want to be in this number of years? So that's a good place to start. I think to have a more deliberate about it rather than reactive would be helpful. So I think in the beginning years, so being deliberate about it, I think that would have helped. It will make a difference. It will put things in perspective. Because also when you have a plan, then you don't have to deal with the feeling of feeling left behind. Or missing out on something, because there's a plan and you know what your plan is. So for a good while, you'd hear about your colleagues doing this and doing that, and also colleagues moving firms like very rapidly, 6 months, 1 year, 6 months. And I stayed in one place for quite some time. So at a point when it was time to move, it was time to move. But later, having come out, I realized that I learned a lot more than I thought I was learning. Because you see, sometimes when you're learning, you don't realize how much you are learning until it's time to apply.
Yeah.
Then you realize that, oh, I actually have learned quite a bit. And so for me, that's why I said I wouldn't say it was a mistake. I wouldn't say I delayed, but I would say it would have helped to have had the plan well ahead, to know that this is the time to move and all of that. But at the same time, we know that, like I said, the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. So in as much as you have a plan, you should also be open, because you may have a plan, but something it may be God's plan to change your plan a bit, order your steps in one way or the other. Because I did have other opportunities that came my way, but for different reasons, I couldn't take them at the time. But now I think that the way it went, staying in one place for a while, as much as I have learned, has equipped me a lot better to do what I do now. Because some of the things that come to me as second nature, I have realized that are not second nature. It was just by virtue of training. Some of the things that make people very flustered became very normal. Probably should not have been, but now it is
like
very
a mental health problem.
it is very hard to, make me flustered or rile me, because I mean, typically you hear lots of stories where, for the litigation lawyers, they say their senior gave them the brief the morning of the case and asked them to go and present it and all of that. So now when I see people are going to court and they're all flustered and nervous, haven't had like weeks to prepare their brief, and thinking back, and I'm like, I got my case, I got my file probably, I was lucky to even get it on Friday for Monday, and you're going to the Court of Appeal where you can't disgrace yourself, and all of that. These are the things, like I said, it's not ideal, but having gone through it for a while, having managed those situations, those challenges, when these things happen right now, I'm not moved.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't know what to say, by the time you go, you will know. And it's just like, these are the things you learn. So every experience is unique. Every experience is unique. So you take what you can from that experience and then also use it to chart your path. So, yeah.
How do you manage your time? So time for work. I mean, career is big. We know we spend like 8 hours every day, or at least Monday to Friday at work. And I know you do more than 8 hours, because typically lawyers work till late at night, almost every day. So how do you manage that with all the other things that you do? So yeah, let's talk time management.
Planning. Because there really is a lot to do. Like you said, we are at work for the chunk of the day, and then there are lots of activities. There's family to deal with. Then there's also ministry to deal with, and for me now it's a lot, right?
Like, but two different ministries.
Two different, and so it's really planning, because I realized that if you don't plan, something will fall off along the way. And so you plan the smaller things around the major things. So on a weekday, what's your major thing? Work. That one is pretty simple. But what are the other things to do? How do you put your house together? How do you make time for leisure? So one thing I do, for instance, is if I know that my weekends are very busy, extremely busy. So on Fridays, when I get home, I try to plan for the rest of the week. So if it has to do with packing bags, if it has to do with finding your clothes, whatever it is. In fact, when I'm on leave, I take the opportunity to iron like everything I have, so that I know that when I begin work for at least 2 weeks, I don't have to iron. Those are the little things I do. So you plan the major things, and then you fit in the smaller things, and then you also accept that you can't do it all. So you have to balance it. Some things will have to be left out because you are one person, and you also need to make time for rest, because if you don't rest, you will not function as effectively as it could. There's a lot of rest is for the weak, sleep is for the weak, but you do need to make time for rest, because that allows you to recharge and then be able to give your best. Sometimes just a few hours of sleep can determine how your whole day will go. So you could have been at work, but you haven't been productive. So you have to balance it out, and then you have to listen to your body. There are days that, I have a lot to do, but I can tell that I'm breaking down, and it's time to actually just rest. In as much as you know that it's not your nature to let things fall off, but it's also necessary. So it's a bit of planning. Then you also listen to yourself, and then you have to be upfront. So because of the way my weekends go, I start planning my weekend from within the week. I don't wait for Saturday to plan, because by the time Saturday comes, it's almost too late.
Yeah.
And then you find that now you're just trying to make it work when it could actually have been done well ahead of time. If there are others involved, I'll start calling, well, how are we doing it? What are we doing? Because it's very important for me to know so that we can put it together. By Saturday, once the day starts, you are go. And so that's how I have managed it. And then also sometimes it's about being upfront. So you have a lot of commitments. Let the other people involved know how committed you can be, rather than to promise and to fail, rather than to say, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because if you continue to be a let's see how it goes person, you become an unreliable person.
Yeah, we'll stop including you and
We'll stop including you, because we can't rely on you. You need to be, let your word be your word.
Yep.
If you say you're going to be there, then you are going to be there. You should be someone that can be relied on. And the danger with having a lot of things to do is there's a high possibility that because you are so committed in so many things, you will not be reliable, because you are spread out too thin. So it's also important to have conversations with all the other stakeholders so they know that this is how committed I can be. So they know to expect you for 2 hours, 3 hours, out of, say, the 5 hours that they would have needed you. That also helps, because it's very important to me for my word to be taken for what it is.
Yeah.
Because I want it such that if I tell you that I'm going to do it, then I will do it. If I'm not going to do it, then you know I'm not going to do it. And then it makes you, as a person, for your integrity is also a helpful thing. So yeah, in doing a lot of things, it's planning, communication, and then knowing how much you can do.
Thank you. Last two questions.
Okay.
So first one, what does audacity mean for you?
Interesting. So audacity from me or audacity from others?
From you.
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
Audacity is the boldness to enter spaces and to not be silenced. And I'll give an example of children. So I have a 2-year-old going on 3. This boy will come to our room and just push the door open like he's the one who pays the bills in the house. And I look at him like, do you know this is not your room? Why are you here with so much confidence?
Yeah.
But you need that audacity that I'm here, so make room.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be silenced. But at the same time, like I said, there should be substance to your audacity, because it's not about empty noise. And I will give an example. For instance, I'll give a litigation example. So there have been times when I had a matter, and you are going to go up against like very senior lawyers, and typically you're going up against the seniors. So it's either they may try to intimidate you. It's all tactics. I mean, we know they may try to intimidate you or something. But for me, I tell myself that I'm here and I belong here, and you are going to hear me, and my point is going to be made. And because of that, it's now, even if you may see the lawyer on the other side and you know that they are very good, you also remind yourself that you are also good. You have also prepared, and the law is the law. Yes, there's a place for experience. You can't discount that. But it's really about, I'm here and I'm going to be heard. If I want to be heard, I will be heard.
Okay.
And a third party should not be able to silence you, because if they can speak to silence you, then you should also be able to speak to be heard. So that would be the audacity.
I love it. So you're here, you're taking space,
Yeah.
whether you want it or not.
Exactly.
Okay, so finally, what is the one thing that you're currently obsessed with?
Well, I think, so now, what I'm doing now is trying to find homemade alternatives to some of the very processed foods. And so one of the things I started doing was like making your sausage at home, right? Because, I mean,
It looks nice.
Sausage, yes. So we've come a long way.
Yeah.
Because from the first, so let me start from, I like gadgets, right? So generally anything that makes your life easier, I'm all for it. And so right now I'm currently collecting kitchen gadgets. And like I've been saying that right now on my wish list, the next one, there's a smart blender, right? And so it weighs the food, it blends it for you according to the weight and all of that.
Nice.
And all, yeah. But before I get to my smart blender, what's it? Food processor, right? All the rage. So I got one, is it worth the hype? I started off by making my mincemeat. I'm like, you know what, this is really cool. Then I said, I can make my sausage. So I saw a few recipes I tried. I mean, the first ones looked a bit questionable. But subsequently, I found ways of doing it. I actually got another gadget to do it so that you can actually do the whole thing. If you want to make it like the round ones, you see, you shape it. So it's very exciting because then really at the end of the day, we are trying to live healthier. And we're trying to eat less processed foods and all of that. So if you can find a way of making it at home, I'm like, you know what? If I've started with this, I'm looking for new things to try,
Corned beef.
new gadgets.
Corned beef.
But that's mincemeat.
Yeah, but I feel like corned beef is like
It's the salt.
processed.
It's the
It's
salt. You see, but really, so so there are times. So now I actually switch out corned beef with mincemeat.
Okay.
A few times I use corned beef first. Corned beef is corned beef.
Yeah.
But there are times where I actually switch it out. So things like that. I'm looking for alternatives and ways to make the things you like healthier without compromising on the taste. And it's not, and what makes it more fascinating is that I'm not one of those people that cooks as a hobby. You know, some people cook as a hobby. No, it's not. That's why it's more fascinating because it's not really a hobby, but it's actually something I find that I enjoy because once you can find a healthier way of doing it, means you can have it without worrying about what you are consuming and all of that. And then, so right now I've got the manual sausage maker, and then recently I saw that there was a machine, the home-sized one too, that I'm also looking at adding to my collection. So I mean,
I love it. Thank you.
That's how it's looking now.
Okay, keep us updated on how that goes.
I will.
When you try
when I
recipes.
start my sausage brand.
We'll be there to buy healthy
Yes,
sausages
Thank you.
with 0 calories.
I wish.
Thank you so much for coming.
It's been good. Thank you for having
thoroughly
me.
enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you did too. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and see you again next week. Bye.